We're going to get started with the questions that we composed several months ago when we interviewed the Northern Lights region about their experiences. And those questions seem to serve us well, so we just tweak them a little bit and plan on using them this evening. So prior to the partnership, what was the level of connectivity between the local churches and between the local churches and the regional level or the regional church? Did it increase the capacity or stay the same? What percentage of churches participated in the regional church before the partnership and now after the partnership? So this is a question about connectivity between the local churches at that level and then between those churches and the regional church. What were your experiences in regards to connectivity?
Well, that question, quite frankly, is kind of premature because we are in the process of crafting the partnership. So we wouldn't have any of those experiences to share.
Okay. Does anyone from our tri-regional effort have any questions about connectivity to add to that? Okay.
I guess my thought is how do you feel about the connectivity of the congregations pre-discussion? Have they been pretty involved with each other? Do they connect with the region a lot, or are they a little more removed? We're congregational and we do our own thing.
And Mike, could you please introduce yourself since you just jumped?
I'm sorry, I'm Mike Ness. I pastor a small church outside of the Omaha metro area in Nebraska.
And our general minister and president has just joined us.
Hi, everybody. Sorry to be late. Got caught on 294 visiting my mom in rehab. So I'm here.
That's a good reason.
Get to see my home folks from Illinois, Wisconsin on the call.
I think somebody else is joining us. Peggy, are you? Yeah, Peggy has alerted us that her internet may cut out.
The 309 number should be Marla.
Okay. Yes. Hey, Teresa. Hey, Bill. My 5:30 started late and ended late, so I am on the way back home to try to dial in and see everybody. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for joining. Okay. Peggy will jump back on just as quickly as her internet kicks back up. And you were beginning to have some questions, Mike, and I'm going to ask you to repeat those questions.
Yeah, I was asking how, as Eugene said, we don't know what the after merging is like, but as of right now, leading up to it, how do you feel your churches, are the churches between themselves connected? Are they connected with the regions so that there's a good connectivity? Or sometimes I've experienced that being a congregational based denomination, that sometimes they get kind of a, well, we're here on our own and we're just doing our thing.
Well, yeah, we're typical. We are typical. One of the goals, quite frankly, as we have looked at what the partnership is going to do and the goals of the partnership, is to intentionally work to create greater connectivity between the region and the congregations and among congregations. That is something that has a lot of room for improvement. We had a study done by Rick Morse about a year or so ago. One of the things that came out of that capacity plan that was a result of his work was that we needed to work on increasing the connectivity between the congregations and the region and among the congregations. So we are incorporating that in our goals. as we move forward in, as I said, crafting the partnership?
It is a problem across the life of, it's not just our church. It is a problem in the culture in which we live that stresses, for lack of a better word, you know, you're on your own, you do your self-sufficient thing. So it's to be connected and to work at that is counter our culture. I'm going to say counter our Caucasian culture has that. It will challenge us, but Eugene is right. We are trying to be intentional about creating connections right off the bat. We're trying to set up a system that gives people a sense of connection and where the links will be and where the opportunities to be together will exist. We have a plan that we're working on because we got a grant and because we just know that that's vitally important. And we have the question asked, you know, why, basically, why bother? You know, the churches in a particular area of a region, one of our regions, don't see any need for a region or any need for this. And, you know, that statement that always kind of gets thrown out there, what have you done for me lately? That's a transactional kind of way of looking at this. And one of the things we talked about in one of our meetings recently was, do you value relationship? What's the value in relationship? What's the value in working together? And so, you know, some of that stuff is going to be there no matter what. So we have to work at it and we have to be intentional about working at it. And that's, as Eugene said, we're trying to develop a plan where we're working at that. And even now, beginning to pray for each other's churches. So we have a prayer list with every church in our region and every church in the Michigan region listed on a weekly basis, where we're just beginning to do that. And we're also beginning to think about, okay, could we create some intentional partnerships between congregations that want to do that? And beginning the first of the year, that's one of the things we're hoping to do, to set up these connections. So it's a challenge, Michael. It's just a challenge in the church and in the culture. And again, it goes back to, I think, asking a real basic relationship question. Do relationships matter? You know? And I think they do. And when we reframe it from what have you done for me lately to do relationships matter? Does you know, is there something that we're called to here that will make a difference? It's not going to change everybody's mind, but it will make a difference.
Yeah, and one of the positive things that there are congregations that are expressing a desire to start doing it even now. Just the idea of us coming together has sparked an interest of reaching across the borders and establishing a relationship. So that bodes well, I think, for what we're going to be working on. I do mean work.
Yeah.
Could I ask a clarification? What is the expression of relationship that you used for these three regions in communicating to the congregations of these regions? Did you begin with the word partnership only, or did you use merger or collaboration? What is the key term that you use to define your relationship that you're entering into?
It has always been partnership.
Okay.
and specifically not merger. And I think there are two reasons for this, and I want to make sure Mitzi and Marla get to talk to you too. One is merger makes people anxious. And in the stories or the narratives we tell, one of the narratives is that Illinois-Wisconsin region is a big region and it's just going to come over and tell us what to do. That's one of the narratives. And we clearly are not doing that. And we're so the Michigan region is they took the lead. They did the capacity plan. They reached out to us to ask for partnership and connection. And who knows what might happen down the road, but right now the conversation is about how we partner, how we're better together, how we share resources, how we help each other and support one another in doing the mission that we're called to do. By the way, the Illinois-Wisconsin region is a really good region, but it's not going to consume anybody else.
This is Mitzi. Some people were concerned about the legal ramifications of the word merger. I don't know if that was more the question of legalities. And at our last board meeting, we came up with the word covenant, which is what we've been thinking about. And of course, relationship is the definition of who we are as Christians. Without relationship, we are nobody. Our relationship with God, our relationship with one another. That's what it is.
And quite frankly, this whole process has its nexus, if you will, in relationship.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you some background. And basically, it's my fault. As a part of that capacity plan, we and looking at our finances, we had established very clearly that the Michigan region could not afford to have a full-time regional minister after I retire at the end of the year. That plain and simple. And there was talk about a part-time regional minister. And that I just could not be, that kept me up at night because I had tried doing it part-time to help financially. And it's probably the worst 6 months of my life because, you know, people are making sure that I held to part-time, didn't work, you know, say part-time and work full-time. So I had to hold true to that. So of course that was just miserable. And I knew that you know, part-time, it sounds good, but it's not really going to work in my mind. So I prayed about it and thought about it. And the regions around Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Michigan, the regional ministers had been providing support services to sections of Ohio. And we did that for 2.5 years. And I thought about that. And I thought how we were able to be effective doing that. And I felt that, and you know, there was only one person that I thought could do that, and that was Teresa. And that I drew that conclusion based on relationship.
Yeah.
I've known Teresa for a long time. She's been, she was an associate at Central Woodbridge Christian Church for a while. And we've always had a good relationship, always been able to communicate. And even as we were colleagues in the College of Regional Ministers, that continued. So, you know, as I prayed, I felt God led me to her. And so I got up, you know, I prayed some more and got up enough courage to call Teresa. And she didn't hang up, so I rejoiced. And, told her what I was thinking, how I felt the Lord was leading. And she said she would think about it. And then I talked to our search committee, and they were very supportive of it. And I consulted with our general minister and president, and she was supportive. So we just held our breath, waiting to hear back from Teresa. And that bright light you saw on January 6th was when she told me yes. And we had conversations between some people from some of the members from Illinois, Wisconsin, and the Michigan region. We had a discussion to just see, well, does it make sense? Does it work? And we thought we felt comfortable that it would. So we presented it to our regional board, regional council on March the 27th. And it was unanimous by the council and by the regional board. And we are moving forward by God's grace. This is where we are, and we're moving forward. So we thank God for that. So here we are.
Awesome. It means a lot that you over and over use the term relationships and the importance, covenant, just all those things that we're all about. The second question on our list is, before the partnership and as you have continued the process of the partnership, how did you engage the local congregations in the conversation? How did you get people in the local churches excited about what you were doing? It sounds like that happened pretty quickly, as you've shared, Eugene, but any other comments? And I know that Teresa made a comment about maybe Marla had something to share, had some additional information to share, but how did you get the local churches excited about it? How did you communicate with them?
Well, that's still a work in progress.
Okay.
That's still a work in progress. We're communicating with the local congregations. In fact, we're in the process now of doing some specific publicity, if you will, to congregations to inform them and help them to see where we're going so they can get excited.
We've got a communication team that's working on putting together, just keeping everybody informed. Here's what's happening. Here's what's the next step, the next step, the next step, and a very specific first-year plan. We got to work on a second-year plan, but there's a very specific first-year plan, and it involves having regional associates in Michigan on a stipend basis who are on the ground in the state of Michigan, willing to work with and develop relationships within a geographic area. We're trying to, in many ways, Michigan is giving up something really important, their own regional minister. There should be some anxiety and some grief about that, and some sadness about that. And so we're trying to, especially through their capacity plan that was developed long before the conversation with me, to figure out ways of connecting congregations and supporting congregations and developing leaders and those connections. Because I'm still here in Bloomington, Illinois. We all have learned a lot in the last year and a half about how you can meet with one another in Kansas, in Nebraska, in Illinois and Michigan, all at the same time. We've learned a lot about that. But there is some sense that, having my own hands-on person makes us, we're just used to that. So we're trying to communicate that, yes, this is different, and yes, things are not going to be the way that they were, but here are some things that we're going to be doing moving forward that are all about connection and all about using the gifts that God has provided and given to us, and maybe even better than ever, seeing the opportunities to develop those gifts and encourage the sharing those gifts in those geographic community areas to support one another. So we're trying to claim the opportunity even in the midst of a great change, and it is a great change.
Questions from our group for our guests in regards to communicate? I think the communication team, that's a note that I made myself, how important that will be to implement. Have you sensed that the partnership has impacted the vitality of the local churches? Any other impact that have been made yet? And I know that Eugene has mentioned that this is still a process, and that that you're in the middle of, that you don't have like the end yet. But are you sensing an impact of vitality in the local church, at the local church level?
I'm going to say I think so. And I want you to know that we actually did a series of listening meetings on Zoom with both regions, and one region and then the other region, because we felt it was really important for each region to have its own conversation, and then also together. And in those meetings, I think there was a sense of anticipation and why have we waited so long? And what might the opportunities be? And I didn't, the energy and the tenor of those conversations, all the conversations that we've had have been positive. And again, those kinds of questions, why have we waited so long, and why aren't we doing more of this? And anyway, Marla and Mitzi, you think of any those meetings and your sense of the energy?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Teresa. And I apologize again, everybody. I'm getting on here late. But as Teresa said, yeah, by the time we got to the third, I think, listening session or Q&A session, the consensus was kind of like, why are we still on the phone? Let's move forward. And then it became, well, I know we're not officially starting this until 2022, but can we start talking now? We want to meet with this group or that group. And so it definitely was in the midst of, a lot of continued change. There was definitely excitement and anticipation about, let's not wait, if we're ready to start having some conversations, let's go ahead and start that now. So that was very good to see and hear.
Yeah, those conversations were key because that gave us a sense of where people were in their minds regarding the partnership. And I was excited with each conversation, the energy, the interest, and the willingness to move forward, because we hadn't decided to move forward at that point. But as Marla pointed out, they were saying, why are you waiting? This should be going forward.
Did you use your regional assemblies as a format for those conversations or listening conferences?
No.
Okay.
We did those by Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, we just announced some special meetings, and people, so I don't even know if they had to register. I can't remember now, but we published the Zoom invites and people showed up. Yeah.
It wasn't it wasn't related or timely for our assemblies.
Yeah.
I see Lori's hand.
I was just curious, when you talk about the participation in this, do you feel like you had, obviously none of us ever have 100% participation, but did you feel like you had a good coverage of the local congregations in different areas and that sort of thing? So you felt like you had good coverage?
Yeah, for Michigan, I think we got a pretty broad participation from various parts of the state, which was encouraging.
I think we did as well. Again, I want the big change is from Michigan. So our folks are, they were there and they showed up and they were excited about it and the opportunities to do it. I don't remember the numbers, but it was good. They were good meetings.
Another question we have is, were there difficult spots
Peggy,
during
you
the
have
part?
a question. You have a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Thank you. One question I have is you mentioned that people were ready to go. They were wondering why this hadn't started earlier, et cetera. Was there a sense across the regions that there was a need for change? I mean, was there, troubled water or a sense by people that we need to do something different?
Not that pronounced in Michigan. Okay, but I think once the idea was out there, people grabbed onto it. Once the idea was presented, then they say, "Yes, let's do it. It makes sense." Because as an indication, if you will, when I shared with the search committee and our moderator that Teresa had agreed to do this, the joy was palpable. Everybody was so happy, so happy, so happy.
And Kelly, I think there is an awareness. I would like to suggest there is an awareness in the life of the church that things have to change. I talk about it two ways. There's the push. Nobody likes to be pushed, right? I don't like to be pushed, but there's the push of things like finances that push us. And there's also the pull. And the pull is spiritual, I think, and it's the one that we need to emphasize more than the push of the money. And that is, what is God calling us to do and be? And for this church that talks about wholeness in a fragmented world, how might we express that wholeness and better by being together? And expressing our covenant relationship with one another, actually working with one another.
Right.
And so I think that's the excitement. That's definitely the excitement. The reality is there were pushes to get to this point. Because, as Eugene has already spoken, this could not go forward the way we were. So, all right, how are we going to do it differently? And how is God going to help us make a way where there doesn't seem to be a way? So this is an opportunity.
And one of the experiences from that we had with the Ohio region, for us as regional ministers, the regional elders were absolutely essential to us being effective during that work. And that's looking at that with our regional associates, probably be a regional elder plus is going to be key for having that connection, and also that connection with congregations, and also that connection between Teresa and the clergy and congregations in Michigan.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, Gene and Teresa, I think everybody that's had a role in leadership in the regional church or the general church, I know I can speak for at least myself in the regional church, the kind of the underlying, I don't know if it's urgency or anxiety about the life of the church and where we're headed, because it's amongst a certain group of people, it seems we're pretty clear we're not going to be able to go the same way we've been going for the last 500 years. And you know, and be successful or be effective in meeting the needs of the people. But what I'm wondering is, do you also sense that people at local congregational levels are feeling that same sort of urgency or anxiety beyond the ministry? I mean, congregational members, that, you know, because that would seem like a real impetus to undergo some change.
Well, you hear a lot of congregations talking about they're concerned about their numbers diminishing, not having any young people, not having any kids, and you know, that makes it very clear that things need to be done differently. And I think people are beginning to understand at the local level, because, you know, it's about what do we need to do for our church to continue, for our church to stay vital. And that, I think that just kind of perks up to the regional and general level.
I think those questions are there, but I'm afraid that often what happens is that congregations and leaders jump to making not adaptive changes, but let's get rid of the pastor, or you know, there's got to be a quick fix to this. And there is no quick fix to this, and there is no silver bullet. This is hard work, and it's going to require us to go deeper than our anxiety and our knee-jerk reactiveness, to dig deeper, we have to go deeper spiritually. And we have to go deeper in terms of looking at what's happening in the world around us, as well as within the systems of the congregations itself, and beginning to think strategically about systems change, rather than, you know, doing what we do, which is kicking out the pastor or whatever else. So anyway, so there is anxiety. Clearly there is anxiety in the church. But I'm not sure that we're having the open-eyed and open-hearted conversations we need to be having about what is it we're being called to do and be differently in this time and place. What is it about who we are that's actually critically necessary for this time and place? And if we could get a hold of that and stop shooting ourselves in the foot, or other places, how could we move forward together? Anyway, I could, there's lots to think about there, but I think it's a deep conversation that most congregations want to skirt and go and find a quick fix. Some days as a regional minister, you get a win, and some days you go, you know, you don't. I had one of those today. I won't go there. Anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with Teresa. There's a lot of anxiety, and unfortunately, a lot of effort and discussion is put into how do we survive? How do we survive? And never taking that deep look, as Teresa mentioned, into how are we going to become more effective doing ministry and create an atmosphere, if you will, or an environment where people see things being done differently and want to come and join us. And Teresa hit the nail on the head. It takes work, and I'm not quite sure that congregations are willing to even approach it that way. Looking for the quick fix, get a new minister and he'll come in and he'll bring young people. Oh my God, how many times have I heard that? You know, if he doesn't do it, then, you know, he failed, as opposed to you know, you failed, you know, and this thing of saying we need to make changes, but and we need more participation, but they want people to come in and do things just like they did them, and you know, nobody wants to do that.
Well, you all have really covered what the next question was, about challenges and difficult spots that you've encountered and how you've navigated them. The fifth question is about what was the motivator for your regions to partner and not merger. You've already discussed that. So I guess our last question is, what are some questions, ideas, other strategies that you would encourage us to consider given our approach to forging or moving toward our partnership? And I know I've made note of the key listening meetings, the communication team, some of those strategies that I think I personally had not thought about, but see how key, how important those are. Do you have any other suggestions that for us as we move forward?
I think there's one that we've touched on, but I really want to put it right in front of us.
Okay.
For us as well as for you, and that this was a movement of the Holy Spirit. Eugene told you he was praying, and our team that has been in meeting and conversation about this has been praying and seeking what is God's guidance for us together and where we're going. And again, we can look at all the pushes and we can name them and get really clear about what's pushing us. But what is it that's pulling us forward? And so I really want to tell you that is in front of everything we're doing. And I would really encourage it to be in front of everything that you're doing. Keep it there, keep it at the heart and at the center, the question of what's God calling us to do and be in this time and place. Because if you get clear about that, you can do pretty much anything, even hard things, if you get clear about that. And so I just want to say, I want you to know that's at the core and the heart of the conversation that we've been having. I also want you to know you should be realistic, because one of the first things I did, wasn't it, Eugene, was ask for your financials, huh?
Right.
and Marla knows. Anyway, when I started in this region 11 years ago, Marla was my right-hand person, my go-to, oh, Marla, what the heck are we going to do? And so my eyes were opened 11 years ago in this region about finances. And so I wasn't going to enter into this partnership without being realistic, because you need to be realistic. You need to know you need to know what your ground you're standing on. How's that? You need to know what ground you're standing on, because when you know what the ground is beneath your feet, even though the ground sometimes moves, if you have a good sense of what that is, you can make a choice about what the next step is going to be. So two things: be realistically grounded in what's real, but also be intentional about asking God to shine the light on what the next right step is for us to move forward. Those are two things that I would say, just keep that in front of you.
There any other questions that those of us from Greater Kansas City, Nebraska, or Kansas have for our guests?
Laura has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Lori.
Of course she does. My question is, what kinds of structural and financial changes are you all anticipating in this merger? Are you going to be combining your finances? Are you going to be keeping your endowment separate, or, you know, what kinds of, what are you anticipating?
I
Well,
see
number
Mitzi shaking her
Not going to
head.
be a merger,
The partnership.
partnership, not merger.
There are separate finances, separate endowments,
And
separate regional. Go ahead, Mitzi.
I'm sorry. And our hope is that we can start meeting together. Like we have a retreat center. We would like the different regions to join together and be a part together of that. That's a big move we'd like to make, but finances are separate. And I think the reason we've come to this point in our history is because our lovely Pastor Eugene is going to be retiring. It's all your fault.
Which goes back to that legal merger question. We're not assuming responsibility for each other's whatever buried things are. We're not assuming responsibility for that.
For those of us in Greater Kansas City, Nebraska, and Kansas, with the agenda, I sent out a copy of their partnership proposal that Eugene shared with me. So if you want to read over that, it's really delineates well the responsibilities and the vision and the background. So for those of us in our tri-region group to maybe take a few moments to read over those, I appreciate Eugene sharing those. I think it helped really help me understand the relationships. So does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you so much to our guests for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening. I think it's been a very lively, meaningful conversation, and it's really helped me. I've written down quite a few notes about things I hadn't thought about before as we continue our process towards partnership.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed the funness or the humor in there,
Yeah.
you know, that was involved in how you all were talking. So thank you for that and the collegiality.
And I think that those of us that have been on our partnership team, we've really built that over the last few months. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to exhibit that level of, working together, our excitement about the relationships. So thank you all for spending a few minutes or maybe a little bit, almost an hour of your time. We really appreciate it. It's been very valuable.
You're welcome.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
very
much.
God bless you.
Well, what did you all think? We put on the agenda that we wanted to process a little bit after our guests signed off. Yes, Chris, I will resend the partnership piece. I will send that to you. I'm glad Chris brought that, sent this chat note to me. We discovered that the group email that I sent the revised agenda to did not include Chris's email address. And so I have it on my notes before we closed tonight that before we send, if we want to send group communication to each other, we need to make sure Chris is in there. For some reason, he got dropped off of the group that I just copied and pasted, and I apologize for that. So before you send a group email, if you could just take a look at all the recipients and make sure that we're all there in the future, that would be great. So what did you guys think? I thought they had a lot of, like I said earlier, good strategies that we hadn't really maybe talked about or hadn't thought about as we consider our process. You think it was helpful to talk to them?
Well, one thing I found interesting was I think they had a pretty good sense right from the get-go about how the structure was going to look in terms of the finances and the legalities of it. They weren't trying to reinvent that wheel. It was more aimed at how are we going to engage the spiritual side of this and the if you will, the spiritually functional side of this, rather than the secular, side of this. And so they weren't reinventing the corporate wheel, but they're trying to find ways to be church together, and leaving the collection plate out of it. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
We haven't really talked a lot about the financial aspect of a partnership. Am I correct?
It's always been in the back of my mind. I mean, that's one of those things that just, lives back there, that, we're going to have some kind of discussion about that. Because if we're, that might help us actually start delineating which path we're going down. Merger, partnership, good friends. I don't know how we're going to talk about this, but if we can eliminate some stuff, it makes some other things easier. So, and I don't know what that even means. So there you go.
Kelly, to add to what you were talking about, I felt this real sense of compassion in how they were looking at the situation and wanting to honor where everyone was at, and still have that sense of, we're not trying to take away your identity. We really do want to honor and compassionately love each other and work together to create something that didn't exist. But like you were saying, not really focus so much on the more technical side of if one region needs, financial help, what creative solutions can we come up with that would be better than talking about who has to give up what.
But yet at the same time, I mean, Teresa recognized right out there in front and in the open that Michigan was really giving up something. And they all recognize that piece of the grief that has to be worked through.
The other piece that came out for me was to recognize that the associate staff and the regional staff in Illinois, Wisconsin is also giving something up. None of them signed up originally to be serving as well in Michigan. And so they're making adjustments, not knowing for sure just exactly how that's going to pan out and what that's going to cost them, but the desire and the willingness to be there for each other and try it out and invest in that and see where that goes.
I had a question that, and Terry, you might be the one who knows the answer to this. Are they planning on changing their name? Are they changing what they look like on the general church map? Or are they just partnering together to support each other?
Yeah, they're not talking about changing the name or creating a new region, not in the same way that the Northern Lights did. So this is really a partnership agreement in terms of how they'll do ministry. It really doesn't address that organizational, structure. It's interesting, and while I have the mic, so to speak, I've had a couple of conversations with other regional ministers. One just today, thinking through sustainability issues and other kinds of things. And I sent them this agreement to think through, because when you have, there are a couple of areas where other regions who have sustainability issues, and this was the Michigan issue, right? That Eugene recognized that it was the right time. In Montana, looking at Northern Lights, kind of had the same issue, but Montana is a much smaller region in terms of the number of congregations. It's a whole different thing. They knew they needed to create a new region. but the notion that one could maintain still an identity as Michigan and Illinois, Wisconsin was important. I think one of the follow-up questions, and I wish it had come to me while Teresa was still on the line, was that they're maintaining separate finances. In some cases, we have regions who don't have very sophisticated ways of managing their books and need more sophisticated ways of doing that, are not excited about maybe using Treasury services because they think it's giving up some of their control, when in fact, it's just hiring someone to do your books. You're not giving up control over that. And I think another aspect of this partnership agreement, by maintaining the books, I'm wondering who's going to be doing the books. If each group is maintaining its own finances, might there be some operational efficiencies? And I think Illinois, Wisconsin is using Treasury services to say, hey, let's all make sure. And I think Michigan may be too, so this may not be an issue, but that would be a question. There are some regions that are large enough where they have their own staffs, or some regions where they're not doing a good job of that kind of management because they don't have the right people doing that work. And so I say all that to say that there are other regions who are facing some of these same realities and thinking both about sustainability, but also thinking about how we do church differently. We used to have every state, right, had a state association and a state secretary. Our density across the continental US and even Canada doesn't support that any longer. And, our congregations, buildings, in some places we have density where congregations would be better suited by figuring out how to create new congregations together. And we're so stuck on this is ours, like it's our club, like it's our thing, our organization that we belong to, that maybe for generations, our family has, we all know about those power families and congregations that where the next generation thinks that because mom was on the board and was the moderator of the congregation that I should be in control. We have all these different, dynamics. So there's a lot of conversation going on across the whole church for a lot of different reasons. So I hope that this conversation also gives you another model. There's the merger model, and they're still, they were very, I think, forthright about the kinds of concerns that people in congregations still have. A lot of our newer regional ministers are coming into regions and finding out that the books were not, that the realities were not divulged. They're finding out that relationships are broken, perhaps because of older, more outdated, not healthy models of leadership that many of them are trying to, reconstruct. And I think as we're doing our governance work about how we make decisions at the general level, that's why that covenant relationship, that covenant conversation is so important, because it is about grounding ourselves in who we are as church with one another, and not who contributes to DMF or what percentage we give or who has what building or how many people you have on your staff, but it's about understanding how we do this work together and how we're faithful together. So Teresa, when I first met Teresa, and I know this of each of these regional ministers because I've now had enough time to work with them, all have shared this hope that I have of spiritual revolution within our church. We've got to be grounded in the reality of what it means to be followers of Jesus Christ and not just 501c3s. That means spiritual literacy. That's why we're talking covenant, and we're not talking about mergers to solve financial problems. Because if we're not focused on why we're doing what we're doing, then all these other things will come to naught, because we'll be part of that nonprofit world that's out there trying to figure. We're nonprofit for different reasons, but we're not a nonprofit. We're the Church of Jesus Christ. So I'll quit preaching, but I just wanted to share with you some of the other conversations. One important one that I had just today, and I was sharing with that regional minister about the work that's happening with this group, and also the work that's happening with Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And hopefully people understand that, yeah, these are all questions we're struggling with, and putting our head in the sand is not going to help. And not being open to new ways of thinking about it is also helpful. So God has a pretty big imagination, according to Walter Brueggemann. And he says, you know, I've been rereading that book recently. He says, we got to get inside God's imagination. Our imagination's too small. You know, that text in Corinthians where it says God uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And sometimes what we think doesn't make corporate or practical sense, God's imagination is huge. God can accommodate and empower and resource anything we decide. And we have to be in tune with what God wants us to do. And sometimes I fear that we're not inside God's imagination too enough. I'm preaching on this in a couple of weeks, which is why it's in my heart. But let's get inside God's imagination, because that's huge and revolutionary and has all kinds of possibilities, because God doesn't make sense. I don't want God to necessarily make sense all the time. I'm open to those possibilities. So I just say that because it's on my heart and as a word of encouragement. So
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else have any thoughts? I know that I'll be thinking about this first hour of our meeting over the next few days. I hope you all will too. But any other thoughts before we go on?
I just have one thing.
Sure, go ahead, Justin.
What stood out to me is, I guess the way to phrase it is, they were very conscious of controlling the narrative of what it would look, you know, controlling the narrative, because they were saying, well, we know what people would say about this partnership. They seem really clear. This would kind of be the rumor that would spread about what's really going on. But they were very clear to say, no, this is not a merger. This is a partnership. This is what it entails. We're not pulling the wool over your eyes or anything, you know. So what I was thinking about was playing out what would the gossip, or, you know, what would be the narrative churches or regions would be saying. So to, you know, you figure out what you think would be said so you can get ahead of it and construct a narrative, you know, that the people can, you know, grasp and buy into. That's part of the imagination thing too, I suppose you're talking about, Terry.
I think it helped to hear about some of their challenges that can help us with our anticipation of what some of our challenges may be. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, my thought pattern as I listened to them talking about covenant, it kind of reiterated to me, we had finished the last discussion doing that covenant program, and I'm like, gosh, now my mind is shifting how I'm processing it, and I'm wondering if and nothing had been decided, but I'm like, you know, gosh, I think my mind will process things a little bit different should we decide to look at the next stage of that covenant program, because it's definitely, you know, we're asking the Holy Spirit in here and guide us, and we're not looking so much at a merge, but a covenant with each other, and I think that could be a good stepping stone.
And just made me think, they also had like a solid date they really had to deal with, kind of, because the Michigan regional minister was retiring, and so they kind of had, well, let's get busy. We got to do something. So I don't know if that's better than not knowing, like setting up a time or having some, like, okay, this is where we're going to end sort of thing, or not, but it just struck me.
I think it's also important to realize this isn't completely finished yet, right? They have a grant to finish this work. So what they did do in pretty short order, because I was involved in some of those conversations, was to bring the idea to the Michigan board and work through it. And then they went to Teresa. So their board met extra times, and they did some thinking on the front end. They applied for the Orion Scott grant. So they did a lot of that in short order, but they recognized they still have work to do. And that's what the grant is for. So.
Peggy, I know you want to move on, but I have one quick question. I didn't receive that report that you were talking about, and I'm curious, does it include some kind of description about their capacity plan? Because we didn't ask them what that was.
The capacity plan.
She mentioned, Teresa mentioned it 2 or 3 times, that they had a capacity plan that they were working off of. And I just didn't know what that was.
I think Peggy's internet is frozen again. So if I can respond a little bit, Rick Morris did a similar process for us in our region when we first got started. We did this in 2016, and that process lasted several months. And during that time, we had a group of about 50 people come together, and he asked us to take a good hard look at the region and ask us, where do you think God is calling you to be and to do? And he would listen to that conversation, and in some respects do some of what Joyce has done with us from time to time. And I know Chris has done this as well, is to lift up. Are you recognizing that these are the themes that are beginning to emerge, so that we had an opportunity to step back and say, oh, yeah, that kind of ties together a lot of the conversations we've had around this. And we didn't call it what Michigan has called it, but it led us in the same direction so that we had a future story. And the future story, although it bore quite a bit of similarity to the former story, it was different enough that people thought, okay, here are some measurables, here's some accountability. Let's go for this. Let's see how this works. I wish I could say that it was transformative. It wasn't. And that speaks to the need to help build ownership for whatever comes out of any process. And so that's one of the things I've appreciated about this particular group, is that we have, hopefully, we have pushed ourselves enough so that we together are owning this process as it unfolds. We have asked Joyce to help us to make sure that we can find ways to achieve that goal. But it's been great to listen to the comments tonight from the representatives from the regions. I sense the ownership. Don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I sense the ownership, and it's inspiring.
I liked Dr. James' comment. The question is always about how are we going to survive, rather than how can we be more effective. And I think that is kind of the vision that we need to have in front of us always, that what we're doing as 3 regions in collaboration right now is, the question is not, it's not about finances. It's not how are we going to financially survive. It's how can we be more effective. I thought it was a really good comment by him.
The word that that we have been actually using is congregational vitality. Is it, or that phrase?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. Or you could even use the word thrive. How can we thrive as the church? So we're kind of circling around the same concept, but using some slightly different words that have maybe some slightly different connotations. But I agree with you, Daryl. We need to keep it in mind what the primary purpose that we're engaging in this conversation for.
And if I can add, at our regional retreat this Saturday, we'll before we close in worship, we will be closing with an exercise based on theory of change that gets at identifying, what does congregational thriving look like? What could it look like? What would be different about thriving congregations in the near term than what they look like right now? So that when we back off of that, when we set goals for the region, those goals support congregational thriving and flourishing in a new environment. And so that's going to require, that first part of that exercise is diving into imagination, into God's imagination. I didn't call it that, Terry, but I'm going to remember that phrase. But that's exactly what it's all about. And the whole, because the realization is we could be making some great new mistakes by simply repeating what we've done in the past. but here's an opportunity for us to think about it. So we're going to experiment with it, and we'll share with you what comes out of that.
Fantastic. I would love to hear that. Yeah.
I apologize. I lost internet again. Where are we on the agenda? I'm so sorry. Had we moved ahead to meeting?
We're still in the same, still processing, Peggy.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was going to say we had really conquered Covenant educational materials, and I was sorry that you had missed the conversation, but they ratted on me and told you the truth.
I guess I'm also sitting here realizing how thankful I am that you all are doing this work together without that pressure of some financial push or, you know, something bad's going to happen if we don't, kind of thing. And although I know you spent several meetings just really trying to figure out, then if we don't have a push because we have to do this, then why are we doing this? And I see where it's leading you, because you've been willing to stay in that space and the conversation is really shifting over time. So I'm just thankful that you don't have a financial piece or something more technical like that you might have gotten kind of wrapped around rather than where you're at now.
I agree, Joyce, that we haven't had a deadline that we've had to meet, that we've had the time to process and get to know each other, build those relationships. Okay, any other processing?
Well, Chris, you've been awfully quiet.
Yes, I am. You should see what I'm typing in my notes. It's not nice. Actually, I've erased all of those. I first need to confess that I'm not in a very good emotional space tonight. So I texted or IM'd Daryl to say, is it me? Or I just feel like we're floating above the clouds. It doesn't feel like, I don't feel like my feet are on the ground in this conversation. So as soon as we start to get to, we talk about this is going to be hard work, or these are going to be hard conversations, but then it feels like we shift, or it seems to me like we shift. And I'm left wondering, what are the hard conversations? Where's the hard work? Because I feel like we're talking a lot. And I feel like we as a steering committee have got to get off this dime. So that's where I'm at. Like I said, I'm not in a good emotional space tonight, so I'm choosing silence as a better way for me to be here. I'm present, I'm fully present, taking full notes, but I'm not sure that what I have to contribute is going to be very helpful. So I hope that honesty is helpful, even if it may not contribute much to the conversation.
Chris, we honor that and appreciate you being able to take those notes because they're so helpful. But we're all at different places in our stories on a daily basis. And so I appreciate you sharing that because I noticed a difference also. I don't know how you all, when we look at, in the interest of time, we really only have 15 minutes left. As a role of moderator, I feel like it's important that we honor everyone's time. On the agenda, I think we need to, we've talked about it over the last few months about if we're going to ever be able to get together in person. I think that, it was pretty much, I think we've been very productive meeting virtually. With what's going on with COVID right now, I don't know that we are going to be able to meet in person. We're all very busy. There's a cost associated with meeting in person. I know when Mike and Joyce and I met to prepare this agenda, we felt like that, is there going to be a benefit of getting together? Are we going to be able to continue to make progress virtually. I personally feel like we can. You know, tonight, Chris is obviously sensing that maybe we're not making as much, you know, that we've hit a maybe a stumbling block or whatever. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but um, you know, I think right now, I mean, I don't know how you all feel. Please speak up that, you know, meeting in person probably is not going to be the best idea in the very, very near future. What do you guys think? I mean, I mean, does anyone have strong feelings about trying to get together?
It'd be great to get together. I would love to get together with you all. It'd be wonderful to get together with you all, but I think we can spend our energy elsewhere, because it's not a simple thing getting together. You know, everybody has to spend time making arrangements, making plans, you know, and all the logistical things that go into getting together. And I'm not sure it's right now worth us expending that energy when we could be expending our energy working together, I think, as well as we are in this virtual space. You know, I feel like I can talk to you all however I need to talk to you all and with you all. And I'm not reluctant to speak out, and I hope you aren't either. And so I think we can work together in this environment for a while longer. And at the same time, that gives us a little space to see where this COVID thing's going. Because right now it isn't going anywhere good. And I think we're going to have to see it play out a little bit.
Kelly, thanks for sharing those thoughts. I totally concur with them. The next agenda item is letter from Kelly. We talked just a few minutes before the meeting actually started about what exactly needed some, there needed to be some clarification, but Kelly graciously composed a letter or a article. Was that what you called it, Chris? I believe an article. Yeah. About our efforts so far. And we were, I know when Mike and Joyce and I met, we were curious as to how that letter had been used, or that article, excuse me, the article had been used. I saw that Chris had shared it with his region previously. I know that this Saturday, we're going to be sharing it with in our regional board retreat here in Greater Kansas City. And so we were just wanting to see if there'd been any feedback. Chris, did you have any feedback from what you shared in your region? Bill and Justin and I and Kevin, if he's able to attend, we can share any feedback after we discuss it on Saturday. There was also a question as to whether there was a second letter written or second article, I apologize, second article written. And if so, you know, who wrote that? Who had said they would write it? Mike said he would be, he volunteered to write the third article, but has a second article been written? And we just need, I felt like we needed to revisit this. Okay, so Mike, can you write the second article?
I'd be glad to. I was just thinking about that, and maybe stemming off in wrapping my brain around it, thinking about talking about the covenantal aspect of my favorite word is perk. I'll perk on that and put something together here to forward to Chris, and he can send it out to everybody. Proofread it for me, see what we think, and we'll build from there, if that'll work.
Here in Kansas, we published the article right after Kelly read it in our regional e-newsletter, and it also went up on our webpage and through our social media accounts too. We've been waiting for a second article, and our communication specialist is anxious to put an update on this in our publication. So as soon as we get it, I will tell you it will go out for people to consume.
Did you have any feedback from Kelly's article?
I haven't necessarily heard anything specifically. You know, I know that I think Steve have also been talking about it in our various clergy groups or when we've gone to visit in churches. There have been times that I've been talking about that with congregations individually, or when I just meet people. So as soon as we have something, it'll be shared.
I think we could probably get started a little with some more discussion about the Covenant educational materials. Mike shared a few minutes ago that he, based on our discussion with our guests, that he feels re-energized about those educational materials. You know, last month was kind of an experiment for us. Thanks to Lori, she led us after we watched the video clip. It sounds like, you know, we all are feeling very positive about those educational materials. What do you all feel are the benefits? You know, moving forward with the congregations, how do we want to use them in our partnership steering group? Just some discussion about the covenant materials.
Bill's been teaching it for several Sundays. What's been your feeling, your reaction to that so far?
The people who are participating are enjoying it. I've gotten to hear their faith stories from people that I've never heard them speak about that before. Last week we worked with a piece that Bill Lee had recorded, and several people. When I say several, we've never had more than 5 or 6 people on at a time. But then this is the first time we've ever done a Sunday school class at 8 o'clock in the morning across the region. But the people who are participating want to do this, and they're saying to themselves and to me, you know, we really need to do this. We didn't realize how isolated we have felt from the wider church, and having this opportunity to rethink what it means to be in covenant is a good opportunity. So they're encouraging that, and they're talking about doing that in their own congregations. One of the pastors of the Belton Christian Church is already doing that, and she's been advertising this particular class to get a couple of folks from her church involved in that. And there's actually been one person their chair of the board who's come on. So we're going to continue to offer it in a variety of different ways, taking our cues from the feedback we're getting from the people who are participating right now.
One of the
I was just going to say thank you real quickly. This tri-regional partnership is helping to kick off our regional retreat. Our theme scripture is from Isaiah, and we're doing Lectio Divina, and Lori and Mike and Justin are each reading that scripture passage at different times as we go through the reflection piece for that theme scripture. So I want to say thank you. This is an example of how the partnership can work on a very simple elementary level, but it does work, and I'm very grateful. And I'm excited for the rest of our regional board to get to meet the two of you. And actually, some of them have not seen Justin, so that's going to be great. And it's another reminder that we are part of the partnership. So thank you.
One of the bullet questions that we came up with as we were creating this agenda was, in what ways could these materials help us address church vitality? So it sounds like, based on what you shared from your 8 a.m. Sunday school classes, that there has been some excitement about the materials. So that's good. Good to hear. I think as we get close to the end of our meeting, we need to continue to explore. I know I'm in the process of going through the educational materials, and I may try to join you this coming Sunday, Bill, to see what that's like, that experience. So I guess we can still we can continue to think of creative ways to use this information or these materials to help build that vitality. Look at my notes here.
While you're looking at your notes, can I just mention that the one thing that everybody has said who's participated is that what makes this different is that their feedback is going to influence the report back to the General Assembly and from the General Board, and from the General Board to the General Assembly, giving a snapshot of how the church, the whole church, understands covenant. They like the idea of being able to help shape what that's going to look like. And that's a key difference in a lot of other things that we've done in the past.
Well, in the mere fact, oh goodness. The mere fact of helping them understand that they're part of the larger church is also exciting. Checking my internet here.
I'm wondering if any of the questions are on any of the studies, and I haven't looked at it close enough to be able to speak to that, if we need to be intentional about some of the questions that we to help formulate the bond between the regions. Bill, since you're teaching it right now, I guess I'm wanting to see if there's a way that we stretch that to incorporate new ideas about region and what that looks like when we partner with others.
Essentially, there's a lot of storytelling in the materials that lends itself to questions. And the questions are more about what are you noticing? What are you experiencing? And the implications of that for the present. And so one of the questions would be, as we listen to, say, Shanja Jha, as she talks about a part of our history from a particular perspective, how are we connecting with that in a way that we might not have ever connected with that? Because we were so focused on what was in front of us and doing what we are supposed to be doing as church. So it broadened our thinking a little bit, and some of the questions that came up with, I'm glad we talked about this. This is something we ought to be talking about in our congregation. So the implications come from the experience of working with the materials and listening carefully to the conversation that's happening. That's the other thing we do, is we listen to each other. I mean, we really listen to each other, and we don't push back. There's no rebuttal. It's basically just encouraging an energetic conversation that eventually begins to reveal some patterns that will become obvious when we process this material and take it back to report it back. We're going to see the spirit moving, and we're going to see some of those fractal patterns beginning to emerge. That people will recognize that and go, oh yeah, I remember that dynamic was going on in our conversation. And yeah.
Sounds like sort of Ignatian exercises going on there.
Oh, now don't get into my Jesuit past.
That's not a bad thing. That was
no, it's true though. There's a lot to that. Yeah. I'm also sensitive to what Chris had said before, that a lot of this conversation right now can begin to feel like 30,000 feet. And I know that there's some concern about what do we do with all of this, because in some respects we do have a deadline. Our covenant with each other was to do this for a year, and that's up in September. And at some point, we're going to have to ask the question, do we want to continue? And if so, how?
Peggy, just going back to your question, in Nebraska, I've been promoting the Covenant Conversation and the website, I think since middle of April, maybe early May, in our e-update, and have gotten no takers. So what I've done is have just kind of added it to my, as I'm talking with clergy one-on-one, just trying to weave in if and when it's possible. My overarching sense, though, is that most clergy are feeling like I can't add one more thing. So I'm hesitant and sensitive, but really wishing that we could at least try. And I don't know, I feel really between and betwixt on that. But just so you know, that's where I'm at in Nebraska.
Well, we are at 8:30. I don't know if we want to, choose to discuss things another 15 minutes, or we want to be respectful of time. We have on the agenda to continue to discuss local church vitality. I see a direct, I see a real relationship with the covenant information that we can talk about more at our next meeting. If we need to look at our calendars, the fourth Tuesday of August is the 28th of August. Is that a good date for people? And I believe it's Kansas' turn to host or moderate the meeting.
I think that the 4th is the 24th.
Yes.
Am I looking right? Yes, I'm sorry. I looked at I was looking at September. So it would be the 24th. Thank you, Lori.
I'm under the impression that Ruby is excited to do this, but in the event that she has to work, I am sure that Kelly is ready in his rotation to take it over. You're welcome, Kelly.
Boy, Lori, I was a little slow on the uptake there. You slid me right in there before I realized what was going on. But
and now you know how I fill all the positions on the regional board.
Yeah, that's fine. If Ruby can't do it, I will.
Okay.
Okay, could one of you determine if Ruby would be available?
I'll be talking.
Go ahead, Lori, you do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow in a conference call with Ken and Steve. So
perfect.
And Kelly will clue you in at some point.
Well, then if Kelly could clue me in so that we, can get together to plan the next agenda for the meeting on the 24th, that would be great.
Yeah. So, when Lori tells me if I'm doing it or if Ruby's doing it, then we'll make that either Ruby or I'll be getting a hold of you, Peggy.
That would be awesome. And then we can get together with Joyce.
I have the prayer at the end, but I'm not feeling well. I can't last another 15 minutes.
Well,
but,
that's fine. You can, since we've got it determined who's gonna, we will determine who will moderate the next meeting on what date. Then Justin, I believe that you can go ahead and close us in prayer, please.
Okay, I'll just paste it in.
No one really jumped on 15 more minutes, so I'd say we're ready for our closing prayer.
Okay, thanks. Gracious God, we pray for your holy church. Fill it with all truth, and all truth with all peace. Where it is corrupt, purify it. Where it is in error, direct it. Where in anything it is amiss, reform it. Where it is right, strengthen it. Where it is in want, provide for it. Where it is divided, reunite it. For the sake of Jesus Christ, your Son, our Savior. Amen.
Good night, everyone.
Justin.
I'm not going to be able to be here next month. So, and I think Chris typed in his chat box, he's not either. So, anyway.
Chris is going to be on vacation.
Yeah, I'll be on vacation too. My first since Christmas of 2019, so I'm not going to miss it.
You deserve that vacation. Does the group feel like we need to pick a different date since there's going to be some people not available? What do you guys think? Or should we move ahead with the 24th?
Chris, what do you want us to do since you're one of our primary folks here?
I'm okay with you all going ahead and meeting, and I can give someone the access to the Zoom room. That's not an issue for me. But it sounds like Terry, Daryl, and I are not going to be here. That's 3 people. That's a chunk of change out of a small group. So I don't know if it's about me or is what the group wants. August 24th. Sounds like you've got a date. If not, I don't know what the alternative is. How do we find an alternative?
Are you going to be gone on the 17th as well?
The 17th is the third Tuesday. How does that sound for everyone? Terry's nodding, Daryl's
I can do
nodding.
that.
Go ahead.
Chris.
I'm
Oh,
not.
Chris, you're still out.
I'll be back on the 26th. So I'm gone. I'm gone from the. What would that be? I'll be gone from the 16th to the 26th.
How about the 31st for everybody, putting it into the last Tuesday of the month?
Yeah. I'll still be gone. Yeah.
That works for me.
That works for me.
I'm good. Terry?
I'm on vacation
on
those
vacation.
last 2 weeks, but I think it's more important that Chris be here than that I be here.
Chris, what about the 31st for you?
For me, works.
Well,
I will not be here then, so I'll help you all plan.
Okay. Is everybody okay with Joyce not being?
Yeah. And I won't be here either, but.
Steve will not be with us at that point because his retirement takes effect right at the end of the month. He's going to take the last week or so from about the 24th to the end of the month as vacation. So this was his last meeting with us.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be, Ken. You can retire and keep doing this.
Oh.
I'm proof.
Yeah, that is true. But I think they have some travel plans, Kelly.
Right. I'm assuming.
So what about the 31st? Do we want to do the 31st then?
31st works for me.
Okay, great.
Works for me.
Terry, that prayer was offered by Justin, and I don't know if he wrote it or if it came from a book. But it was from Justin, who's no longer with us.
Okay.
It was a wonderful prayer.
Yes,
Okay,
it was.
I can see everybody. I will let Ruby know that it's the 31st, and Kelly, I'll let you know how she responds.
Thank you, Lori. We appreciate that. Okay, well, I think we can all say good night now. Thank you.
Good night.
And
Good night.
Chris,
Good
I will
night.
send you and Lori the partnership proposal. Does anyone else need the partnership proposal? I'll just send it to everyone again.
Yes.
And make sure that Chris is involved in on the list.
Thank you.
Thank you,
night.
Peggy.
Uh-huh.
Good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Good night.
Good night. Are we meeting?
Oh, I thought we were. Bye, Ken.
Oh my. Okay. Well.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that.
I don't either. Well, why don't I send a doodle poll and see if there's another time when we can all get together, because I think we probably should talk about this.
Yeah. Well,
and by the
especially
way,
if Joyce isn't going to be there on the 31st, that might help craft the agenda that we can talk in her absence about. What do we need from her in wrapping things up for this first year contract?
Yeah.
And then if we don't know where we're going, I don't know how we justify. I mean, I could probably get the region to kick in another $5,000 to do another year. But sooner or later, somebody's going to get smart and saying, what is it that we're getting? And I think we need to have that conversation. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get a little bit more clarity about that at our regional board retreat. By the way, Paxton Jones is going
Oh,
to...
just a minute. Hang on a minute. I just realized I'm recording this.
Oh, okay.